I've always known my role in the family, not the star, not the problem child, just the buffer, the one who didn't need checking in on, the one who'd figure it out. My name's Ethan Walker, 30, financially stable, emotionally exhausted. For most of my life, that stability has been used against me. It's funny, in a bitter kind of way, how competence can become a curse when you're surrounded by people who mistake it for indifference. Growing up, my sister Madison could set the living room on fire, and they'd call it a spark of creativity. I could win a regional math competition, and they'd forget by dinner. When she scraped by in college, they threw a party. When I graduated with honours while juggling 2 part-time jobs, my mum, Barbara, framed my diploma for 2 weeks. Then it was replaced with a picture of Madison and her husband Ryan at some overpriced dinner they couldn't afford. They'd ask me for small favours. A $300 loan here. A last-minute emergency fund for Ryan's startup. I kept a spreadsheet. After 5 years, it was over $18,000. None of it returned. I told myself it was fine. I had a decent job at a consulting firm, worked hard, bought myself a modest 3-bedroom condo on the edge of town. My place. Paid every cent myself. No co-signers. No help. It wasn't luxury, but it was mine. Quiet. Controlled. Mine. I used to think that would be enough to finally set a boundary between their chaos and my peace. Turns out I was just one conversation away from being wrong. And that conversation, it came wrapped in lasagna and lies. It was a Thursday, early October. Crisp air, warm smells, all the markings of a family dinner carefully orchestrated to feel casual. My mum, Barbara, had made her signature lasagna, the kind she only ever bothered with when there was something she wanted to soften. I should have known. Madison and Ryan were already there when I arrived, lounging in my parents' living room like they owned the air inside it. Madison was glowing in that specific way people do when they've just decided something for you. We sat. We made small talk. Ryan rambled about a new business idea, flipping condos, which apparently meant binge-watching renovation shows and calling it market research. Madison showed off her new handbag. One glance, and I knew it cost more than my entire bedroom set. Halfway through the meal, my mother cleared her throat. "So, we've been thinking," she said, tone light, eyes darting to my dad Linda for backup. I put my fork down. Not dramatically, just enough to acknowledge the weight of that sentence. "With Madison being pregnant and all," she continued. My gaze snapped to Madison, who gave a small, triumphant shrug, like this was a game she'd just won. "Wait, pregnant?" I asked. "Oh, we thought she told you already," my mother said, faux surprise coating every syllable. "Anyway," she went on, "they've been having such a hard time since the rent increase. Here it comes. And we thought it made perfect sense for them to move into your condo next month." Silence. Not a question, not a suggestion. A declaration like a lease already signed. "You could take the smaller bedroom, or stay with us for a bit while they settle in," she added. My dad nodded, proud of the plan like it was some masterstroke of fairness. Madison was already scrolling through nursery furniture on her phone. "I found a crib set that'll fit perfectly in that front room. You know, the one with the bay window? My window, my condo." That way, my mother chimed in, "You won't have to maintain such a large space all by yourself." They weren't asking, they were assigning. My home, the one I'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford, was now a group project. I looked around the table, waiting for the punchline. But there were only nods, smiles, entitlement disguised as concern. So I smiled too. "Sounds reasonable," I said, lifting my glass. "When were you thinking of moving them in?" The relief was immediate. Shoulders relaxed. Madison beamed. My dad started talking logistics. "First of the month," Ryan said. "That gives you, 3 weeks? Perfect." I took another bite of lasagna, chewed slowly, swallowed the insult, and began to count down the days. The day after dinner, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the walls I'd painted myself. Madison had said she'd paint over them. Too sterile, she claimed. The condo was too cold, too masculine, not really homey. She hadn't asked if I was okay with it. None of them had. It was as if, somewhere in their minds, my hard-earned property had simply transitioned into a shared family resource, a blank slate for their chaos to redecorate. I thought about the closet I'd organised, the tools I'd mounted in the utility room, the basil I'd been growing in the kitchen window for over a year. The place was mine, and in 3 weeks, they'd be walking through it like they were the ones who earned it. But I wasn't angry, not in the dramatic, shouting way they probably expected. I was focused. If they wanted my place so badly, they could have it, just not on their terms. That morning, I emailed my boss in Chicago. I had turned down the senior consultant promotion 2 months earlier. Relocating hadn't felt right at the time. The tether to my family still held me back. But now, that tether had been severed with surgical precision. Is the offer still open? I wrote. "I can start in 3 weeks." The reply came within an hour. Yes. And how soon can you be in town to get your onboarding done?" "Soon," I replied. I started moving quickly, not chaotically, but strategically. I didn't use the realtor my parents had recommended in the past. I found someone 1 town over. Her name was Tara, and she didn't know my family. That was important. We met the next day. "I want to list it under market," I told her. "Enough to move it fast. No drawn-out offers. No drama." She raised an eyebrow. "You trying to avoid something? More like outmaneuver it." I had professional photos up by Friday. The listing went live Saturday morning. By Monday, I had 3 offers. By Wednesday, I'd accepted a full cash buyer, 21-day close. Perfect timing. I kept the charade alive. To Madison and my parents, I was preparing the place for her arrival. I boxed up furniture. I let Madison walk through the condo again. She pointed at things with that smug tone of hers. "This'll have to go. Ryan's bringing the sectional. And we'll definitely repaint this wall." I nodded, smiled. Took notes even. "This closet could work for baby stuff," she said, opening the door to the space I'd custom built for my suits. I swallowed something bitter. Not rage, not sadness, just detachment. "You can change whatever you want," I said. "It's all yours." Madison beamed. "You're such a good brother." I packed more boxes that night. Not for her, for me. I changed banks. Transferred my savings to a new account. Left just enough in the old ones to maintain the illusion of normalcy. I sold what furniture I couldn't move. Shipped the rest to a Chicago storage unit I reserved under a friend's name. I redirected my mail to a P.O. box across town. I signed a lease for a high-rise apartment with lake views. The security deposit was wired the same day I got confirmation from Tara that the sale was locked. 3 days before the closing, I told my family I'd be heading out of town for a quick business trip. "Don't worry," I said. "I'll be back before you move in." They didn't ask questions. Why would they? Everything was going according to their plan. Closing day came. I flew in from Chicago, signed papers, picked up my check, and drove back to the condo to load the last of my things into a U-Haul. I was out by sunset. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe them one. That night I crossed state lines, hit cruise control, and never looked back. They were supposed to arrive 2 days later Madison, Ryan, and my parents. I imagined the four of them pulling up with a moving truck, Madison pointing at the bay window like she already owned it. I imagined them confused when they saw someone else's furniture being carried inside. The new owners wouldn't know what to say. They didn't know anything about Madison or about her baby. They just bought a condo from a guy named Ethan, who seemed like he wanted a clean break. My phone vibrated endlessly that day. Voicemails, texts, group messages I'd never signed up for. Where are you? What's going on? Call us right now. You need to explain yourself. How could you do this to your family? I let it all come through. I didn't respond. I stood in my new apartment, high above Chicago, glass of whiskey in hand, and let their panic echo into the distance. I had kept my promise. They were moving in, just, not to my place. The day they were supposed to move in, I slept in. No alarm, no rush, no obligations. I made coffee slowly, leaning on the counter of my new apartment, watching Lake Michigan glitter like nothing bad had ever happened there. It was quiet, a kind of quiet my old life never allowed. By noon, the buzzing started. Missed calls, messages, a group chat I hadn't named, family home plan began lighting up like a Christmas tree on fire. I ignored it. Somewhere, hundreds of miles away, Madison and Ryan were standing in front of a condo that no longer belonged to me. Maybe my parents were with them, maybe not. Either way, someone was explaining to them that the condo had been sold. And no, the new owners had never heard of a Madison or a nursery. I'd paid for expedited title transfer and early access. The buyers had the keys. The moving truck they'd hired was unloading into their new home, the one Madison had claimed like a royal decree. I imagined her face, confused, then angry, then accusatory. Because that's how it always went. She couldn't conceive of a world where things didn't orbit her. I let the image linger for a full minute before turning my phone face down and cracking open a box labelled Kitchen Chicago. By the evening, the calls had shifted from confusion to rage. Voicemails from Barbara, my mother. How dare you pull something like this? Your sister is pregnant, Ethan. Where are they supposed to go now? You need to call us back. Now. My dad's tone in his one message was disappointingly familiar. Disappointed, but never at Madison. I don't know what's gotten into you, son, but this isn't how family treats each other. Ah, yes. Family. That catch-all term for doormat with a last name. I didn't respond that day. Or the next. 2 days later, I finally sent a message. No explanation, no essay. Same place I was supposed to go. I guess you'll have to figure it out. Then I blocked every number, individually, slowly, like checking items off a list. Over the next few weeks, Jenny, a co-worker from my previous office who had never been close to my family, but close enough to hear whispers, sent me updates. So, your sister's living in your parents' basement. Whole thing is a mess. Your mum's telling everyone you had some kind of nervous breakdown. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Jenny became my reluctant correspondent, a window into the wreckage. Ryan apparently lost another job. Madison's credit cards are maxed. Your parents are footing the bill again. It was all predictable. They'd created a monster and fed it for decades, then blamed me for running when it turned on them. I felt not happy exactly, but vindicated. It wasn't revenge, it was relief. Then came the twist no one saw coming, except, maybe, me. Remember that crypto thing Ryan was into? Jenny texted one afternoon. Turns out he invested more than they admitted. Like, a lot more. It unraveled fast. Apparently, Ryan had convinced my parents to invest part of their retirement into a coin with guaranteed 40% returns. The coin cratered within weeks. But instead of admitting the loss, Ryan doubled down. He took out 3 payday loans, maxed out 2 credit cards in my parents' names. He even used my dad's social security number on a sketchy application. They didn't know until the calls started coming from collections. "You're lucky you got out when you did," Jenny said. "It's ugly." Madison had threatened to leave him, apparently pregnancy hormones and foreclosure notices. Don't pair well. I felt a twinge of something. Not pity for them, but for the baby. That kid didn't ask to be born into a financial minefield built on ego and delusion. So I sent a baby supply gift card, anonymous, to Madison's in-law's address. A quiet offering to someone who didn't deserve the storm coming. That was all they'd get from me. My life in Chicago bloomed faster than I expected. Work was demanding but rewarding. My team respected me, not because I kept anyone afloat, but because I knew what I was doing. I started making real friends, people who didn't know my past, people who didn't expect me to shrink so someone else could shine. I wasn't the backup plan anymore. I was just Ethan. 6 months later, a letter arrived, forwarded from my old P.O. box. The return address stopped me cold. Walter, my grandfather. The handwriting was uneven, shaking. I opened it slowly. "Ethan, I heard what happened. Your mother's version doesn't add up, but I've always known you were the strong one, the smart one. I was wrong to believe she needed more just because she was louder. I've changed my will. It's not much. But I wanted you to know I see you now, and I'm proud of you." I sat on the balcony that night and cried, not out of guilt, not out of regret, but because, for the first time in decades, someone in my family saw me, really saw me, and for once, I didn't have to shout to be heard. It had been almost a year, 12 months since I walked away, since I stopped answering messages, stopped rationalizing dysfunction, stopped bending over backwards for people who only remembered I existed when they needed something. My condo had new owners. Madison and Ryan were still in my parents' basement. Their baby had been born, a girl. They named her Eden, but Jenny told me Madison was calling her little Ethan as some kind of peace offering. I didn't reply to that message either. I wasn't ready to decode the psychology behind naming your child after the brother you tried to evict from his own home. Still, when the birth announcement made the rounds, I sent one more anonymous gift, a long-term savings bond set to mature when Eden turns 18. Attached was a sticky note. For college. No strings attached. That was it, the last string I'd ever allowed to connect me to that family. Chicago had become home in a way my old town never really was. There were friends who laughed without judgment, who didn't see me as a resource or a fallback. There were dinner parties where nobody talked about who needs it more. There were slow Sunday mornings with coffee that I actually enjoyed, not gulped out of necessity before cleaning up someone else's mess. I'd never felt lighter or more untethered. Then the phone rang. An unknown number. One I didn't recognize, but had a sinking feeling about. I let it ring, but it called again and again. Eventually, the first picked up. "Ethan?" My mother's voice, tentative, soft, weathered. I said nothing. Let her fill the silence. "Please don't hang up," she rushed out. We need help." The word we made my skin crawl. "Your father, he had a mild heart attack last month. We're okay, but the medical bills, here it comes. And Madison and Ryan are still living here. Eden too. The house, we might lose the house. We need help, we need you." She paused, waiting for the version of me she remembered. The one who'd ask, "How much?" before she even finished. But that version of me was gone. "I'm sorry to hear about Dad," I said. My voice was even, flat. "I hope he recovers quickly." "That's it?" she whispered. "That's all you have to say?" I inhaled. What would you like me to say, Mum? That I'll sell my soul again. That I'll give up my life to fix the same problems created by the same people. The silence on her end was different this time. Heavy, real. We're your family, she finally whispered. No, I said. Calm, steady, final. You're Madison's family. I was just the backup plan, the safety net, the one who'd always land on his feet while you built parachutes for her with pieces of me. I could hear her breath hitch. She wanted to deny it, but she didn't. Who told you that? She asked. It doesn't matter, I said. We both know it's true. Another pause. I have to go now, Mom. Take care of yourself. I hung up. And this time, I didn't just block her number, I deleted it. That night, I got a message from my firm's regional director. A role had opened up in our London office. International strategy, more money. New challenges, they wanted me. The Ethan of 5 years ago would have hesitated, would have worried about distance, about being too far if something went wrong at home. But now, there was no home to hold me back. I accepted the offer that same night. My new flatmate in London texted me a photo of the view, fog over the Thames, soft city lights glowing like promise. Rooms ready. Bring your drama-free self soon. On my way, I replied. The night before my flight, I sat on my Chicago balcony one last time, a glass of wine in hand. My feet up on a railing I'd installed myself. The skyline glittered like a heartbeat. I thought about all the versions of me I'd had to burn to become the man I was now. The son who overcompensated. The brother who filled in gaps without being asked. The young man who mistook obligation for love. They were gone. In their place was a man who understood something no one had ever taught him. Real love doesn't ask you to set yourself on fire just to keep others warm. That family had expected me to be their eternal safety net. Instead, I became my own. The next morning, as my plane cut through clouds over the Atlantic, I let out a breath. I didn't know I'd been holding for 30 years. I was done running toward people who only reached for me when they were falling. Now I was flying. And this time, I wasn't looking back. Story 2. You ever have one of those moments where your entire life pivots? For me, it started with a whisper at the kitchen table. I was 9, doodling on my homework while my parents sat across from me, both unusually quiet. My dad, usually the jokester, reached for my hand. His fingers were shaking. Leah, sweetheart, he said. We have something to tell you. That was the day I learned my dad had cancer. At the time, I didn't really get it. But I understood enough to know that nothing would be the same again. For the next 2 years, our cozy, chaotic home transformed into something clinical visits from doctors, casseroles from neighbours, and a constant undercurrent of dread. I watched my dad fade from this energetic, larger-than-life guy into someone who struggled just to climb the stairs. My mum put on a brave face, always smiling when I was around, but at night I'd hear her crying. I used to sit by their bedroom door, unsure whether to go in or just listen. He passed away when I was 11. The funeral felt like a bad dream, black clothes, quiet voices, and this ache in my chest that never quite went away. A week later, Mom sat me down again. Just her this time. I've been talking with Grandma June, she said, eyes avoiding mine. I think it'd be best if you stayed with her for a little while. Why can't I stay here? I asked. I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear her say it. I just need time, honey, to process, to figure things out. The next morning, my dad's mum, Grandma June, pulled up in her weathered old sedan. She didn't talk much on the drive, but I could tell from her grip on the steering wheel that she wasn't thrilled about this either. Life with her was quieter, more structured. She made me pancakes on Sundays, told me stories about Dad when he was my age, and helped with homework. But no matter how warm or welcoming she tried to be, I was always waiting for a phone call, a visit, a sign that Mom would want me back. The calls did come, but always with the same vague reassurances. Just a little longer, Leah, or things aren't quite ready yet. And always that same hollow promise, soon. 6 months later, she finally showed up. I was at the kitchen table again, some sort of cosmic symmetry, when her car pulled up outside. Except she wasn't alone. She stepped out of a sleek silver SUV, her hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, and a man I didn't recognize stayed in the driver's seat. "Leah," she said, practically glowing. "I have the most amazing news." Grandma June stepped in from the living room, arms folded. "Olivia, this is unexpected," she said, cool but polite. "I want you to meet someone special," Mum continued, ignoring the tension. "His name is Darren. He's a successful business owner. And get this, he has 2 daughters, just about your age." "We're getting married." She said it like she was announcing a vacation. "You'll have sisters now, Isabel and Chloe. Isn't that wonderful?" I looked out the window. Darren didn't even glance toward the house. Grandma didn't say much, but I could see her jaw clench. "Don't you think this is a little fast, Olivia?" "Oh, when you meet him, you'll understand." "He's perfect for us," Mum gushed. "Come on, Leah, let's go home. The girls are so excited to meet you." I was too stunned to argue. The house, my old house, Dad's house looked the same from the outside, but everything inside felt wrong. On the front steps sat 2 girls in matching outfits, their smiles as forced as Mum's enthusiasm. "We know who you are," said Isabel, the older one. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes weren't. "Our dad told us everything," Chloe added, stepping closer. "But just so you know, he's not your dad. He's ours." "And your mum?" "She's going to be our new mum." They both smiled like it was a punchline. Inside, it was clear who the new favourites were. I was the extra piece trying to fit into a finished puzzle. 3 months later, at their wedding, that became crystal clear. Isabel and Chloe twirled around in pink bridesmaid dresses. I wore a plain blue one, like an afterthought. When the photographer lined us up, they positioned themselves so strategically that I was barely visible in the photos. That should have been my red flag, but I still hoped. I wanted to believe that if I just tried harder, if I was quieter or more helpful, maybe they'd see me again not as an obligation, but as family. That didn't happen. Darren wasn't outright cruel. He just acted like I didn't exist. He'd come home, hug the girls, kiss Mum, and breeze right past me. I could have been a lamp for all he noticed. And Mum? She tried to compensate by becoming the world's most attentive stepmother. To his kids, not to me. The first Christmas was brutal. The girls got iPads. I got a clearance sweater and a prepaid phone. I didn't even complain. I just stared at my plate and pretended not to care. Thank God for Grandma June. She never forgot me. For my 13th birthday, she mailed me a silver locket with a photo of Dad inside. I wore it every day until Isabel asked to borrow it, saying, "That's what sisters do." I said, "No." The next day, the chain was snapped and the locket was bent. Grandma also sent me a set of fancy art supplies. That year, my one real escape was drawing, like Dad used to do. A week later, I found my sketchbook soaking wet and the pencils snapped. I confronted Chloe and she just smiled. "Prove it," she said. When I showed Mom the ruined supplies, she sighed and said, "You probably left them outside in the rain. Stop blaming your sisters." The final straw came when I turned 15. Mom called a family meeting to announce she was pregnant. Everyone clapped, cheered, except me. I already knew what it meant. A few weeks after baby Mason was born, they sat me down again. "We need to make some changes," Mum began, eyes not quite meeting mine. "Mason needs his own room," Darren added. "So we were thinking, you want me to move out of my room?" I finished for them. "The room Dad built." The air went still. "This is my house," I said quietly. "Dad bought it. You moved into our house. And now you're pushing me out." Darren flushed. The girls looked stunned. "How dare you," Mom hissed, her voice shaking. "After everything we've done for you." "Like pretending I don't exist?" I asked. After that, they didn't speak to me at all. Not at meals. Not in the hallway. Not even when I left the house. Because I did leave, I called Grandma June, and within the hour, she was parked outside. I walked out with a backpack. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. Honestly, I think they were relieved. Back at Grandma's, I could breathe again. We had pancakes and quiet mornings and laughter, real laughter. For the first time in years, I felt safe. 2 months passed. Then one morning, Grandma sat me down and said, "Leah, I've been talking to your mum. She's willing to give up parental rights. I'd like to adopt you only if that's what you want." I said yes without hesitation. The legal part was shockingly easy. My mum didn't even argue. I think she was happy to be done. When we went to collect the rest of my stuff, no one was home. My things were packed in boxes, left in the garage. My old room had already been transformed into a nursery. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just loaded my boxes and left. High school with Grandma June was a completely different world. She didn't hover, but she was always there quiet, steady. She made dinner every night, helped me practice for debate club, and left handwritten notes in my lunchbox like I was still 9. Not in a clingy way, just small things that reminded me I mattered. At school, things were a little awkward at first. Emma and Chloe, yeah, they were there too. Same school. Same fake smiles. But we might as well have been strangers. We didn't make eye contact in the halls, didn't speak. It was like we'd all silently agreed to pretend the other didn't exist, which honestly worked for me. Instead of chasing their approval, I threw myself into school. I studied like my life depended on it. Maybe, in a way, it did, because I knew if I wanted any kind of future, it wouldn't be handed to me. I'd have to earn it myself. Grandma was my biggest cheerleader. When college application season hit, she sat beside me while I filled out every form, proofread every essay. When my acceptance letter came from State University, partial scholarship, and all she cried, real, full on tears of joy. "I've been saving for this since your father passed," she said that night, pulling out a small weathered ledger. "It's not millions, but it's enough. I wanted you to have choices." That moment stuck with me, not just because of the money, but because it was the first time in a long time that I felt anchored, like someone had my back, no strings attached. College flew by. I kept my head down, worked part-time, called Grandma every Sunday without fail. She came to visit when she could, and when she couldn't, we FaceTimed from her kitchen to my dorm. I was building something slowly, piece by piece, and it finally felt like mine. But life doesn't stay perfect. It never does. I was in my final semester when Grandma called. Her voice was softer than usual. "They found something, Leah," she said. I knew what she meant before she explained. I moved back home on weekends, driving hours just to sit with her in the hospital. She told me stories from her childhood, ones I'd never heard before. We laughed. We cried. And she made me promise not to miss a single class. "I didn't raise you to throw away your future for an old woman," she'd say, grinning even when the machines around her beeped warnings. Graduation came. She couldn't be there in person, but we live-streamed it from her hospital bed. I looked right into the camera, blew her a kiss, and mouthed, "This is for you." She said she cried the whole time. A week later, I was holding her hand when she slipped away in her sleep. Planning her funeral didn't feel real. I was picking flowers, writing her obituary, choosing music all in the same house where we used to drink cocoa and watch old reruns together. And that's when they showed up. My mum, Darren, Emma, Chloe, and a boy I didn't recognize until someone whispered, "That's Mason." He looked just like Darren, maybe 8 or 9 now, hair gelled, suit a size too big, standing awkwardly behind them. They came in as if nothing had happened, like we hadn't cut ties years ago. Mom approached me at the casket. "I'm so sorry, Leah. June was a wonderful woman." I just nodded. No anger, no warmth, just emptiness. Then she said, "I know it's been a long time, but maybe we could have dinner, all of us. Try to make things right." I didn't respond right away. I was staring at her face, older now, a little more lined, but the eyes were the same, always calculating. "I'll think about it," I said. Later that week, after the reading of Grandma's will, I found out she'd left me everything: the house, her savings, her car, every penny she'd saved for me, for years. It hit me then. I didn't just inherit her money. I inherited her legacy, her strength, her belief in me. I agreed to the dinner, not because I believed in second chances, but because I needed closure. Their house hadn't aged well. The paint was peeling, the lawn overgrown. Inside it smelled like cinnamon candles and air freshener trying to mask something rotten. They were all waiting at the dining table like some awkward sitcom family. Darren was in a polo shirt that screamed weekend realtor. Emma and Chloe smiled too wide. And Mum? She'd made lasagna, my favourite. "So," she said, voice falsely bright, "what are your plans now that you've graduated?" "I'm staying in town," I said casually, moving into Grandma's house. I saw it then, a flicker in her expression. Just a second of something between relief and satisfaction. Something didn't sit right. Still, I played along. Got a job, entry-level exec at a local firm. Good pay, good benefits. And no rent to worry about, thanks to Grandma. The first started putting away savings, slowly building a life. That's when Mom started showing up again. She'd drop by with cookies, casseroles, fake cheer, small talk followed by stories about how hard things were at home. The water heater broke, she'd sigh. Michael needs braces. Chloe got laid off. It's just hard right now. The first time I helped, it felt harmless. She mentioned a plumber they couldn't afford, and I handed her $150 without thinking. She looked so grateful it almost hurt. But then it happened again. And again, 100 here, a few hundred there. Emergency this. Last minute that. Eventually, Emma and Chloe joined the routine. Emma was a receptionist with car trouble. Chloe worked retail and needed help with rent. And Michael, he was the innocent one. He asked for a school laptop and I couldn't say no. When he hugged me and said, "You're the best big sister ever," I felt something soften. Like, maybe we were rebuilding something real. Then came the New York trip. Emma and Chloe asked to come along while I attended a conference. They said they'd never been anywhere outside the state. So I bought them cheap tickets, booked a modest hotel, and watched them gawk at skyscrapers like wide-eyed tourists. For a moment it was nice. I let my guard down. Dinners became regular. Birthday gifts, surprise help with bills, even holiday outings. Everything felt almost normal. Until it didn't. It was a random Tuesday. I was at work reviewing reports when Mum called. "Hey, sweetie," she said, like she always did. "How's your day?" We talked for 10 minutes. Michael's science project, Emma's job hunt, Chloe's cat. And then, casually, do you think you could transfer $200, just a little car repair, nothing major? Sure, I said, and sent it on the spot. What I didn't realise? She never hung up. I heard rustling, then Emma's voice, sharp and mocking. She fall for it again. Mum laughed an ugly, bitter laugh. I hadn't heard since childhood. Of course. Little Miss Ivy League. She always does. Lisa chimed in too. Did you see that blazer she wore to dinner? Yikes. Darren's voice joined in. Keep it small, Olivia. We don't want to scare her off. I know, Mum replied. Just got to keep her thinking she's helping. Then we'll start asking for the big stuff. House, savings hell. She's got more than all of us combined. I froze. I ended the call with a single tap and sat there. Still silent. Not sad. Not hurt. Just done. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't get dressed. I just sat in my kitchen, staring at my coffee until it went cold. I kept thinking about that phone call, the shift in Mum's voice, the way they all laughed, the way I didn't even cry, because somewhere deep down I already knew. I just refused to admit it. All those dinners, all those smiles, the sudden interest in my life. It was never about me, it was about what I could give. Money, time, energy. And I had given all of it. Freely, hopefully. Like some fool looking for a family where one didn't exist. That night, Mum texted, Mom, family dinner tonight at 7. Everyone's excited to see you. Love you. I stared at the message for a long time before I replied. Me, I'll be there. Because I was done pretending. When I walked into their house, everything looked staged like a low-budget play. The table was set, lasagna bubbling in the oven. Darren smiled too wide. Emma and Chloe were dressed like it was Thanksgiving. Even little Mason ran up to hug me. I let him. He was just a kid. We sat, passed food, chatted like nothing had happened. Then Mom cleared her throat. Leah, we wanted to ask you something important. She reached for Darren's hand, that same performative move she always used when it was serious. The house needs some work, Darren said. Structural stuff. Foundation, cracks, mould, that kind of thing. We got some estimates, Mum added. It's going to cost around $10,000. She looked at me with those wide, pleading eyes. We hate to ask, but we were hoping you might help. I smiled. And that smile must have set off some alarm because Mum's expression wavered for just a second. No, I said. The table fell silent. No? She repeated, confused. Not 10,000. Not $10. Not another cent. Emma blinked. Chloe frowned. Darren leaned back in his chair. Sweetheart, Mum said, reaching for my hand. I pulled it back. You forgot to hang up the phone yesterday. Dead silence. I heard everything. About how you're tired of pretending to like me. About how I'm your little cash cow. About how you think I'm stupid just like my dad. Mum's mouth opened, but nothing came out. You think I'm stupid for trusting you. You think I'm weak because I wanted a relationship. And you think you deserve my money more than I do. We were joking, Chloe said quickly. It wasn't serious. Emma followed up. It was just venting. We didn't mean anything by it. Darren cleared his throat. This is a misunderstanding, Num. The only thing I misunderstood was thinking any of this was real. I stood up. And honestly, I should thank you, because now I know. Now there's no more wondering, no more hope, no more reaching across a table that was never set for me in the first place. I grabbed my coat. I don't want your apologies. I don't want your dinners. I don't want anything. Mum looked like she might cry. I didn't. I walked out the door and didn't look back. Not this time. They didn't take it well. The calls started that night. Mom, then Darren, then Chloe. Voicemails, emails, texts, all with the same tone sweet on the surface, but laced with guilt and manipulation. We're still family. You're overreacting. It was just a joke. I blocked them all. They started showing up at Grandma's house, knocking on the door, leaving notes in the mailbox, waiting in their car across the street. I didn't answer. Instead, I made a decision. 2 weeks later, I walked into my boss's office. Remember when you said the New York office might be expanding? She looked up from her desk. I did. Are you interested? I'm ready. By the end of the month, I had the transfer papers in hand. I listed the house, Grandma's house, the only real home I'd ever had. It sold in less than a week. Prime location, quiet street, great bones. I packed my life into boxes, closed the door one last time and drove away. Now I live in an apartment in the Upper West Side. 4th floor, big windows, quiet neighbours. There's a bookstore down the street and a park view from my kitchen. I think Grandma would have loved it. Sometimes I think about them, the family I used to want. I wonder if they ever talk about me. If Mason remembers the big sister who bought him a laptop. If Darren still says my name like it leaves a bad taste in his mouth. If Mom ever regrets that phone call. I don't wish them harm. I just don't wish them anything at all. I've stopped measuring love by DNA or legal documents. I've stopped chasing people who only see my worth in numbers. I've stopped asking for a place at tables where I was only ever a seat filler. My life now? It's quiet. It's mine. And for the first time in years, I'm free. Final thought. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most will hurt you in ways that leave. No bruises, just shadows. But healing isn't about revenge. It's about recognizing what you deserve and finally walking toward it alone if you have to. And when you get there, you'll realize you were never really alone to begin with. You just had to stop looking in the wrong places. Story 3, I used to think being the eldest daughter meant being the anchor. Turns out I was just the default babysitter. Let me start from the beginning, before things spiraled into screaming voicemails, inheritance threats, and a Christmas that shattered whatever was left of our so-called family. I was 6 when my world first cracked. My dad, Greg, had a voice like thunder and a temper to match. My mum, Elena, tried to keep things calm for my baby sister, Ivy, who was barely 2 at the time. But it was a losing battle. I remember one morning vividly, Mum was brushing Ivy's hair, humming something soft, maybe a lullaby. That moment stuck with me, because by that night, the walls were rattling with their worst fight yet. "You're impossible, Greg," she'd yelled. "You control everything." The divorce happened fast after that. The next morning, she was gone. Just gone. Dad told us she'd left for good, choosing alcohol and other men over her own kids. And I was young, just young enough to believe him, because what else could I do? Enter Nicole. Dad's shiny new partner, 15 years younger than Mum, and always smiling like she was in a toothpaste commercial. Ivy clung to her immediately, calling her mommy within weeks. I couldn't do it. Every time Nicole tried to braid my hair or tuck me in, I'd flinch, pull away. "Harper," Dad would snap. "Nicole's trying. Be respectful." Respectful? I had a real mum, somewhere, and nobody seemed to care. So I stopped trying. Ivy thrived under Nicole's care dance classes, pageants, tea parties. I drowned myself in books and planned my exit strategy. I knew school was my golden ticket, and I wasn't about to miss it. By the time I left for college at 18, I could finally breathe. No Nicole hovering, no Dad barking orders, no guilt trip about being the difficult one. I still came home for holidays and breaks, mostly to see Ivy. She was 15 by then, pretty, polished, and everything Nicole had moulded her to be. During one winter visit, I found her curled on her bubblegum pink bed, glued to her phone. "You thinking about college yet?" I asked. She glanced up, lip gloss perfect. "Not really. I'm getting married." I choked. "You're 17. 18 in April," she said breezily. "Nicole introduced me to Owen. He's from the Preston family. Real estate, super successful." I tried not to scream. "But you always wanted to be a teacher." Ivy waved me off. "That was kids' stuff. Nicole says women are meant to raise families, not waste time on degrees." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. It was her life. But God, it felt like watching someone walk into a trap with their eyes wide open. I graduated and got a remote job as an accountant. Nothing glamorous, but stable, flexible, and mine. Ivy married Owen in a wedding that looked like it belonged on the cover of a bridal magazine. Within 2 years, she had 2 kids, Liam and Nora, and that's when things really started to go sideways. It started innocently well, as innocently as showing up uninvited with 2 kids can be. "I have a hair appointment," she said, dumping diaper bags on my couch. "Be back in a few hours." "Thanks, Harp." Before I could say a word, she was gone. That became routine. Ivy would swing by with emergencies that looked a lot like yoga class or shopping dates. At first, I didn't say much. I figured she was overwhelmed. Motherhood is hard. But then came the surprise weekend getaway. No warning, just a suitcase, 2 kids, and an "I owe you, sis," before the door shut behind her. I tried everything: early mornings, late nights, squeezing in client calls between diaper changes. My spreadsheet started filling with typos. Clients started questioning invoices. My boss noticed. One day, I finally snapped. She dropped the kids off midweek again, and I said, "Why not ask Dad or Nicole?" "Dad's always working," Ivy shrugged, "and Nicole says the noise gives her migraines. Besides, you're just so good with them." She was halfway out the door, hair done, nails fresh, like she'd just stepped out of a spa. Meanwhile, I was pulling 12-hour workdays with a toddler wrapped around one leg and a baby screaming in the background. The final straw? A Tuesday afternoon. Liam was bouncing on the couch. Even though I told him to stop, Nora was gnawing on a crayon. I turned to stop her for 2 seconds, and that's when I heard it. Thud. Liam hit the floor hard. He cried, then calmed down, but by the time Ivy returned, a dark bruise had bloomed on his shin. She lost it. What the hell, Harper? He could have broken something. I trusted you. I was done. "Maybe if you watched your own kids," I began. She cut me off. "You're so irresponsible. Were you too busy with your spreadsheets to care that my son got hurt?" Something inside me fractured. "Get out," I said. "Take your kids and leave." "Excuse me, I'm done being your unpaid nanny. I have a job, one I like, one that pays my bills. You want childcare? Pay for it." She looked stunned, then hurt, then furious. I ushered her and the kids out. The moment the door shut, my phone rang. "It was Dad. What the hell did you just do?" Ivy's in tears. "She doesn't like how I watch her kids? Then she can watch them herself." "You will apologize," he growled. "This behavior is disgusting, and if you can't put family first, don't expect to be part of the will. Ivy will inherit everything." There it was. The money. The carrot he'd dangled my entire life. I hung up. The next day, I texted Ivy, "We need to talk." To my surprise, she agreed. We met at a neutral cafe. She looked tired. Maybe for the first time, I saw her without the glamour, without Nicole's perfect polish. "I might have overreacted," she said quietly. "I love Liam and Nora," I told her, "but I need notice. I can't do last minute anymore. We agreed on a schedule. Tuesdays and Thursdays. No more surprise drop-offs. It helped. I actually started enjoying my time with the kids when it was on my terms. But peace was temporary because Christmas was coming. And with it, another ambush. By December, things were tolerable. Ivy stuck to the schedule. I stayed focused on work, and I even started making space in my week to play with Liam and Nora on my terms, not hers. So when I booked a Christmas ski trip with a few old college friends, I didn't feel guilty. I hadn't taken a real vacation in years. I needed the break. No spreadsheets, no surprise toddlers, just snow, quiet, and some badly needed peace. A week before I was supposed to leave, Ivy mentioned her own plans over text. Can't wait for our Europe trip. Paris, then skiing in Switzerland. Marcus is excited. I assumed that meant their kids were going too. Logical, right? I mean, family vacation. Wrong. 2 days before my flight, I dropped by Ivy's to deliver gifts for the kids. The house was a war zone, suitcases spilling onto the floor, coats half packed. Sarah, my stepmum, barking orders like a drill sergeant. I handed over the presents, expecting to say a quick goodbye. Instead, Ivy lit up. Oh, these are perfect. They'll keep Liam and Nora busy while they're at your place. I blinked. At my place? She kept smiling. Yeah, it's adults only, obviously. Marcus planned the whole trip with his college friends, super exclusive. So, you'll have them for Christmas. Ivy, I'm leaving tonight. I've had this trip planned for months. That smile dropped fast. What? I'm going skiing with my friends. I told you about this. I'm not here for the holidays. The room went still. Dad looked up from his tablet. You're abandoning your family over some ski trip. I stared at him. No. I'm honouring the vacation I planned months ago. You know, like adults do. Sarah stepped in, arms crossed. You didn't think to check with us first? Did you check with me before assuming I'd watch 2 kids for a week over Christmas? Ivy's your sister, she snapped. And you're their grandmother, I shot back. Why not ask you? Sarah looked personally offended. I'm too old for that level of energy. And I'm too busy, I said. This is not my responsibility. Dad stood up. Enough. You've always been selfish, Harper. This is the last straw. If you can't put family first, don't expect to be part of it anymore. The inheritance, all of it goes to Ivy. There it was again, the money hammer. I didn't even flinch this time. You know what? Keep it, I said. You're all so used to dangling that money like a leash. I'm not biting anymore. I grabbed my coat, turned and left. They didn't follow. At home, I packed fast. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or regret. I felt free, furious, but free. Like some invisible chain had finally snapped off. That night, as I settled into a rented cabin with my friends and a steaming cup of cocoa, I opened my security cam app out of curiosity. There they were, Ivy, Dad, Sarah, pounding on my door. Ivy was bouncing a crying Nora on her hip while Liam sat quietly on the welcome mat, playing with a toy car. Sarah kept peeking through the peephole. Dad looked like he was about to combust. They stayed for hours, first knocking, then yelling, then sitting on my porch like I'd just locked them out of a castle. The messages started piling in. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, 27 calls from Dad, 40-something from Ivy. Even Sarah got in on the action. Voicemails ranged from guilt-tripping. You left your niece and nephew crying on the porch to threats. If you don't call back, don't bother coming home. I turned off my phone. 3 days into the trip, I got a text from my cousin, Naomi. Hey, just heard the drama. Apparently Sarah finally hired a nanny through her country club. Paid her triple. Lol. Guess babysitters aren't so easy to find. I laughed for the first time in days. Let them scramble. Let them finally understand what they'd taken for granted. But they weren't done. A week later, I came home to find my social media blowing up. Dad had made a public post. It's with a heavy heart that I disown my eldest daughter, Harper. She has chosen selfishness over family, abandoning her sister and young niece and nephew on Christmas. From this day forward, all assets and inheritance will go to Ivy, who understands the value of loyalty. The post had hundreds of likes and comments. Most were from his business friends and church circle. Lots of, "So sorry, Greg," kids these days. Sarah had reposted it with a caption about modern values ruining the family structure. I read it. Didn't react, didn't comment, just closed the app, let them put on their show. I had nothing to prove anymore. Then came the message that shook me. Catherine Myers wants to connect with you. My mother. The woman who, according to my father, had vanished into booze and bad decisions. Her message was careful, honest. I saw your father's post. Harper, the first so sorry. I followed your life from a distance all these years. College, graduation, everything. I never stopped thinking about you. If you'd be open to meeting, I'd love the chance to talk. If not, I understand. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I said yes. We met at a quiet cafe across town. When I walked in, I spotted her instantly. Older, softer, but still unmistakably Mum. She hugged me, and I smelled that same lavender perfume she used to wear when I was a kid. For a second, I was 7 again, safe in her arms. We sat down. She stirred her tea and said quietly, "You deserve to know the truth." Then she told me everything. Dad had lied about everything. She never abandoned us, never drank, never cheated. In fact, he was the one who filed for full custody and won by painting her as unstable. She had proof, emails, legal records, even letters from my childhood that were never delivered. Worst of all, she'd been paying alimony all these years, a large sum intended to be set aside for me and Ivy when we turned 18. Enough to cover college, a down payment on a house. Dad had never said a word, not once. Instead, he used that money as leverage, held it over my head like it was his. He even sent her videos of us with Sarah, titled them things like "They're real mum now," told her we'd forgotten her, that bringing her back into our lives would just confuse us. She cried when she showed me the messages. Said she thought she was doing what was best for us. I believed her. And then something in me hardened. I went home and wrote a post of my own. To everyone who saw my father's announcement and judged me without asking, here's what you didn't know. My mother never abandoned us. She was forced out by lies, legal manipulation, and control. My father cut her out of our lives and then told us she didn't care. The inheritance he dangled wasn't even his. It was money sent by my mother for me and my sister. So, no, I don't want his money. I don't want anything from a man who used his daughters as pawns to punish the woman who left him. If you want to talk about loyalty, let's talk about the loyalty of a mother who kept paying for 2 kids she wasn't allowed to see, just so they'd have something when they grew up. I have everything I need now, the truth, my peace, and a mother who never stopped loving me, even when I didn't know it. The responses came fast. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years DM'd me, shocked. Aunts and uncles started unfollowing my dad. Some of his business partners went radio silent. Dad texted me that night, "You misunderstood everything. I was only trying to protect you." I didn't respond. Sarah called. Ivy texted. I blocked them all. After blocking them, Dad, Sarah, Ivy, I expected silence. Instead, it was noise from all directions. Fake sympathy posts. Sarah crying about family betrayal, Ivy posting pictures of Liam and Nora with captions like, "At least they still have one stable parent." But I didn't reply, not once. I didn't defend myself, because the truth doesn't need permission to exist. Instead, I focused on something I hadn't had in years: peace. Mom Catherine invited me to dinner the next week. Just us, no pressure. She made my favourite dish from when I was little, chicken and wild rice soup. Said she wasn't sure I'd remember. I did. That night, we sat at her kitchen table for hours, talked about everything. Childhood birthdays she missed, the books I read, my favourite teachers, Ivy's dance recitals, the gap between what I lived and what she never got to witness. She showed me photo albums she'd kept, pictures she'd taken before the divorce, me as a baby in her arms, Ivy asleep on her chest, photos Dad never let us keep. For every picture I'd never seen, a memory I thought I'd lost came rushing back. It hurt, but in a way that helped me heal. "You think you'll ever talk to Ivy again?" Mom asked me one evening gently. I thought about it for a long moment. Maybe, if she ever wakes up and sees how much damage Dad did. Mom nodded. She's still young, still under his shadow. She's got kids now, I said quietly. She's going to pass it on if she doesn't break the cycle. That's what scared me the most. I knew what it felt like to grow up in a house where love was conditional, where silence was safer than asking questions, where the only currency that mattered was obedience. And I refused to let that be my legacy. In the months that followed, I slowly rebuilt. I moved to a small apartment near Mom's neighbourhood. She insisted on paying the deposit. I pushed back at first, but she said, "This is what that money was always meant for. Let it do what it was supposed to." I accepted. We started having dinner together every week, sometimes twice. She told me stories. I shared ones I'd never told anyone. We laughed. We cried. We healed. Liam and Nora, I missed them. But I also knew I couldn't be the aunt they needed until Ivy became the mother they deserved. One evening, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Ivy. "I heard you moved." I wanted to say, "I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time. She didn't ask for anything. No follow-up. No. "Can you babysit?" Just those 3 words. I didn't respond that night or the next. Instead, I let it sit, like a seed in winter. Maybe one day it'll grow into something, maybe not. And that's okay, because the thing I've learned is this: healing isn't always about going back. Sometimes it's about building something new from the ruins, something solid, something honest. It's been 6 months now. I'm thriving in my job again. The errors that once threatened to derail my career, gone. Turns out it's a lot easier to focus when you're not dodging toddlers or surprise visits. I've reconnected with a few old friends. Even started dating again, nothing serious. But I'm open in a way I haven't been in years. I've started therapy. Real therapy, not just venting over coffee or crying in the shower. And I've realised something. All that time I spent chasing approval, trying to be the good daughter, the reliable one, the backbone, none of it was for me. It was survival, a performance. But I'm done performing. The Harper who swallowed every insult, who gave up weekends and holidays, who believed love had to be earned, she's gone. In her place, someone who knows her worth, who protects her peace, who says no and means it. And here's the thing. For all Dad's talk about family loyalty, he never understood what family really meant. It's not guilt trips and inheritance threats. It's showing up. It's honesty. It's someone remembering your favourite soup and cooking it for you 20 years later, just in case you still like it. It's love without conditions. And I've found that now, with mum, with myself. Sometimes the family you rebuild is stronger than the one that broke you. So if you're reading this and you've ever felt like the forgotten child, the backup plan, the fallback babysitter, let me say this: you don't owe anyone your silence. Your burnout isn't proof of love. And choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. I don't have a mansion or a trust fund, but I've got peace, I've got truth, I've got people in my life who actually see me. And that's more valuable than any inheritance ever could be.